An episode I'm calling Ward 8 Oween because it will air in Halloween week. So tell me this, is Ward 8 even competitive? Because we got news about the avalanche of money, like just an unprecedented level of both PAC money and money going into campaigns on the Team Fry side. So Soren Stevenson, he's the only one outraising his Team Fry opponent. They seem to have given up on him. Is it competitive in Ward 8?
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We are back on the Wedge Live podcast for an Ward 8 episode. I'm joined by Ward 8's favorite, Andrea Riehl, and lawyer to the stars, Dan Suitor.
Thanks for having us, John.
Thank you for being here. Dan, I thought we would start by saying goodbye to Andrea Jenkins, the incumbent council member not running for re-election. If I can find my music. Where is my music? Here.
Can we cue some Boys to Men? It's hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
No, that's not the music we'll be playing.
And through it, oh, she offers me protection.
Andrea Jenkins has had an incredibly long career with the city. Predates either of us. She was an aide at City Hall. She worked for the city. She grew up here, I believe. I don't know her whole biography. And she went on to become the first Black trans woman council president across the country. And for that, she deserves an incredible amount of praise for the bigotry and outright hatred she undoubtedly fought through in her career. And all of that was for this. To be one of the least engaged, least informed, mayorally aligned candidates over her last couple of terms. I don't know how she drifted before I moved here, but at least while I've been here, I have not really felt particularly represented. And actually, one of the candidates we're going to talk about felt kind of the same. So, Councilmember Jenkins, if I could sum her up in recent years, she would vociferously argue and concern troll for the mayor's coalition, and then vote with the progressives when it became clear they were going to win. And on a couple occasions I witnessed, then asked to be made a co-author of the progressive legislation that she was fighting against, to kind of prog-wash her reputation. I think she's a savvy operator, and I think her service to the city should be commended like the shape of it. And since I moved here about half a decade ago, I haven't felt particularly represented. And so I wish her well, on a personal level. And I'm glad I'll be represented by somebody else.
Dan is bringing the very serious criticism. And I don't know if I would say I attribute that to her being a shrewd operator. Maybe you have I don't know which of us has the more generous take. I have seen her as legitimately confused on issues, but maybe that was feigned confusion, so she wouldn't have to take responsibility for constantly switching back and forth from one side to the other. I never knew where she stood.
Andrea, do you have long-standing feelings
my
on
sort of
Councilmember?
theory of the case for Andrea Jenkins is that she joined the city council as a progressive. She was an artist before and has sort of been in the activist space. But the more time she spent at City Hall, and particularly her stint as council president, sort of turned her into an institutionalist in a way that led to some very confusing positions on topics and sort of put her in different coalitions at different times that never really were coherent to me as a constituent.
I didn't have that much of a problem with her ideologically. Sometimes she voted against the progressives. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. You were a legit moderate here, and that's fine. It's okay to have people in the middle of the council. But it was odd because I think of Ward 8 as a very progressive ward. And to have someone going in lockstep with the mayor, Mayor Fry, this mayor, was very odd. You're both Ward 8 residents. Is my impression of Ward 8 correct? This should be a progressive ward, and Andrea Jenkins has not been that.
I think so. We've consistently, for every other office, voted for more progressive candidates than Andrea Jenkins has been in the last 2, at least, city council terms, and probably at least, maybe even last 3. Our state representatives are all far more progressive than she is. We voted overwhelmingly for Mary Moriarty. We did not vote for Jacob Fry. This ward is generally just far more progressive than she has shown up in the city council.
And I'll add, we were on the right side of like every 2021 ballot question. In particular, the MinPost website that tracked it by ward is broken, and the city's data doesn't show it. But my recollection from that MinPost website was that Ward 8 was one of the strongest rent control wards. And Andrea Jenkins, wherever her other stances are, has been pretty pro-landlord, at least in rhetoric, if not in the final vote.
Before we go any further, Dan, are these sweatshirts a campaign finance violation? Have we decided can we do this on a podcast? Eric Harris Bernstein sweatshirts?
Yeah, the press is immune. This is commentary. This is editorial. You can actually make an endorsement as the news without it being a campaign finance violation. Just like the Star Tribune used to endorse, the Wedge Live has a history of endorsements. So, and I always, when I ask myself about morality and legality, I ask myself what Hill and Lake Press would do. And Hill and Lake Press writers have pictures of themselves in Elizabeth Schaefer shirts. So, as goes Hill and Lake Press, so goes Wedge Live. That's the famous saying.
I had a weird moment at an Uptown Association meeting recently where a person who is both involved with Hill and Lake Press and the Uptown Association tried to stop Taylor and I from entering a meeting about their plans for a business improvement district where Schaefer and Lydia Millard were in attendance. That was odd. Speaking of Hill and Lake Press.
Did Lydia Millard think it was a Ward 7 event? Because she loves Ward 7.
Does Lydia
Who doesn't
Millard
love Ward 7? It's a great ward.
Does Lydia Millard love Ward 7?
Didn't she famously have a bunch of events in Ward 7?
Maybe. It's possible.
I don't know. We're going to get to these complaints, but I think Ward 7 and Ward 10, they get too much attention here on the Wedge Life podcast. Well, and that's why I originally added you, is because I was like, wherefore Ward 8?
Yeah, we are here because of you, and so tell me this, is Ward 8 even competitive? Because we got news about the avalanche of money, like just an unprecedented level of both PAC money and money going into campaigns on the Team Fry side. $250,000 for Elizabeth Schaefer in Ward 7, $170 for Lydia Millard in Ward 10, 120 something for Shelley Medore. These are like eye-popping numbers, especially in Ward 2 and Ward 10. Like Ward 7, there's a lot of money floating around. All like record-breaking for these wards. I don't think a candidate in these wards has ever raised that much money. Schaefer's raised more money than any council candidate in history, probably, in a single year. Oh, yeah. So Soren Stevenson, he's the only one outraising his Team Fry opponent. They seem to have given up on him. Is it competitive in Ward 8, or is the conventional wisdom that Soren Stevenson has got this?
So what I like about this is we have perspective, because Andrea, right, you live on the west side of the highway. You live on west side of 35W, right? Yeah. Well, Ward 8 straddles 35W, and there is a pretty notable divide between demographically and kind of other political qualities. And I can say on the east side of the highway, there's like very little Josh Bassais presence. It's like one sign on my street. I know that's not the be-all, end-all. I haven't been door knocked by Bassais that I'm aware of. I don't think it's competitive. I think the final vote might not be a North Korea number, like despite Soren Stevenson being DSA aligned, like we may not have a red march down Nicollet Avenue. But so the final numbers may not look like that, but I don't feel it's particularly in doubt.
Okay.
But
I'd say
Andrea,
on
what do you think?
my side of the highway, I have seen what I would consider, cards on the table, a distressing number of Josh Bassais signs. But I also, in other parts of the ward, I think, in particular, I live in North Kingfield. I see most of those signs in South Kingfield area. The further north we get, and definitely the further east we get, I see fewer and fewer of them. I think Soren's team is outworking the Bassais team far and away. I've seen their canvassers out a lot more. I've seen, like, my house has been knocked several times, even though we already have a yard sign out. Like, they're just out. And from what I have seen anyway, doing quite a lot of work to shore up the vote. But, you know, I think Soren was feeling pretty confident in the last election and ended up losing on a thin margin. So how we define competitive, I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout either.
38 votes. So Soren Stevenson is a second time around as the Ward 8 council candidate. Lost to Andrea Jenkins by 38 votes, I think, in 21. Back for a second time. Famous
23.
Oh, 23, yes. 2-year terms. He was famously shot in the face by MPD in 2020, lost an eye. Anything more to say about Soren Stevenson's background, Dan?
I would say he has a background in housing and homeless outreach. One thing I would say about the 23 campaign is a source close to the campaign told me that for major parts of the campaign, especially I think late in the process, they were taking Sundays off of door knocking. And that was a question that people within and without the campaign, they might have supported it, but I think it didn't go unquestioned. And I wouldn't say that cost them 38 votes because I believe they knocked the entire ward is what I was told. But I do think at the end, maybe there was, I don't want to say overconfidence, but these campaigns are hard. And 23 was a hard campaign year. That was like a really brutal year. We were still kind of closer to a lot of the like post-COVID public safety discourse, you know, that now feels so far away. You know, we're still dealing with a lot of car theft in that year. And I think that Andrea Jenkins had a lot of advantages, even though she lost the DFL endorsement. That's the other thing, is Soren Stevens has now been DFL endorsed 2 cycles in a row, but he lost to Andrea Jenkins in the election despite being endorsed.
Right. I remember being shocked that Stevenson lost and Katie Cashman won, because Katie Cashman was the one like, yeah, good effort, but it's Ward 7. How are we going to win Ward 7? And in Ward 8, people seemed to think Stevenson was going to win because Andrea Jenkins' campaign just looked so feeble.
But a very long history in the ward.
Mm-hmm. And yes, it's time to put our biases on the table. Dan, you have laid your biases on the table very well. But the impressions of the two candidates generally, broadly, like how do we feel about Josh Bassais and how do we feel about Soren Stevenson? Like how, as a Ward 8 voter, Andrea, like how do you see the candidates and how are you making your decision?
I mean, I will be ranking Soren number 1, which is what I did last time as well. And my current, and I actually early voted, so I already did this. I wrote in a couple of famous Kingfieldians as my 2 and 3. I did not rank Josh Bassais. So I have some pretty significant biases on that. And part of this episode is kind of, I think, maybe talking through like what went into that. For me, there's a few key things. One is an impression. The very first time I met Soren Stevenson, he had reached out to another organization that I volunteer with to learn about housing policy. And the way that he approached it, as someone who has a background in housing, he has like a degree in housing and he works in homeless outreach today, was actually really something that drives me crazy about people who run for city council, is they actually really want to be the mayor. Like they're always talking about things that they want to change that are the mayor's responsibility. He very specifically wanted to know, what can the city council do? What are sort of the municipal level things that the city council could make changes on around housing that would result in more housing, that would result in better opportunities for people to sort of have affordable housing. Like, he was very laser focused on like, what is it that the city council can actually do that I should know about going into this, which was just a different approach than most people take. You know, they just sort of say, oh, I'm going to come in and fix it. Like they're running for the mayor. And so that was my first impression of Soren. And since then, I feel like he's taken that approach on a variety of issues where he's like, I understand the office that I'm running for and really want to think about how I think the best approach to sort of the city council's role in addressing these issues that residents face would be. So for me, that has been the biggest differentiator between him and Josh Bassais this time.
So when I watch Soren Stevenson at candidate forums, incredibly thoughtful and seems to be responding to the public conversation. He doesn't just have his talking points. Like, he's legitimately a very progressive DSA endorsed candidate, but his answers, and I don't say this in a way to imply he is hiding his real views, his answers are very reasonable, and it's very obvious he has heard all of the things that have been said on this topic and has developed his position like with those things in mind. Like, he's having a conversation with lots of different people and taking lots of viewpoints into consideration. So I have appreciated like his responses to encampment questions, for example, have been some of the best that I've heard. Dan, what are your thoughts? Can we get some thoughts on Josh Bassais? We're not talking enough about Josh Bassais. Yeah. How do we feel about him?
So I have a lot of, I think you'd be maybe surprised about this, but I just want to lay one thing out. Just as like an actual like bias is that I volunteered with the Soren campaign in the caucus and convention process.
Well, our guest book, I'm firing the guest booker. How did we let this man through the screening process?
Well, I think people deserve to know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I was precinct like captain at the caucus, which doesn't mean, it means you count and you get some free snacks. Mm-hmm. I didn't really do that much persuasion. My precinct was pretty aligned, as was kind of, not to front run it, but he was elected by 69% to 31 roughly. Mm-hmm. At the convention, not elected but endorsed. Yeah, Josh Bassais. So I want to go back to the debate, the debate that the campaigns co-sponsored at the MLK Park
Rec Center,
Community Center. Mm-hmm. It was April 22nd, and I went in, and we were all fresh-faced, and we had at the time we had more mayoral challengers, and we were all so excited. And I went in and I was like, I don't know Josh Bassais. I'm a little biased towards Soren because I voted for him last time, largely on his stance on homelessness. I was like more of an issue voter in 23 than like a well-rounded voter. And I was really impressed by Bassais in that room. I thought he was more moderate than me, but I told people at the time, whether it was Brower, and I think I told Eric Harris Bernstein and Alex Schiefendecker, I was like, we got a race. Like the guy was reasonable, compassionate, like a little more rough around the edges than a lot of Minnesota candidates. Like he kind of has, like, maybe I identify with it because he's kind of got like more of a brusque East Coast demeanor, even though he's from here. He's just very direct and very like
slicked hair.
He can be a little sharp. I didn't think it was like, at that time, I didn't think it was a huge problem. I thought he only made like one gaffe at that debate when he made some comment about like homeowners being the ones who have a stake in their neighborhood,
right? Which is
it was kind of like an anti-renter statement, although I don't think he meant it that way, but it may have like betrayed his frame of reference. But I was like, I don't know, he's a little more of a business-minded guy, but he had a lot to say. He actually led the discussion in that debate on like walkable communities and things like that, which I don't think is as much of Soren's focus. I don't think he's opposed to it. But Bassais was like, yeah, we need walkable communities. We need commercial in communities. He talked a lot about a pharmacy closing. And I was like, it's great to have a pharmacy like this. So I was like, we have a real race. He was reasonable. He was funny. I didn't think he blew anything up in that debate. But there was like a little red herring, or not a red herring, but like a little seed planted back in your podcast with him on the 28th. I went back and listened to it. And at that time, he was kind of patronizing about DSA. He was like, "Oh, I'm happy that there's all this energy and these people trying to change things, but I'm a DFLer. Like, I'm a lifelong DFLer." And it's kind of a throwaway comment, but I think it kind of set the stage for probably what his biggest gaffe. You called it on the biggest gaffe in any convention.
Oh, really? Did I call it that?
I think you said it was like the worst answer in any lightning round or any debate at a convention.
For that question. It's a question that gets asked at every convention. Mm-hmm. And to screw it up means you've really screwed up because you know it's coming. Like, how do you not know what you're going to say? And if this is what you plan to say and it goes over so badly. So it's...
Will you suspend your campaign if someone other than you is endorsed by this convention? A yes or no answer only, and we'll start with Soren Stevenson.
Yes. Considering I'm the only true DFL candidate,
blew past that, didn't answer that at all because he knew he was going to lose probably, and said, "I'm the only Democrat here," to a convention full of DFL delegates, telling them what they are about to do is invalid because he's the only DFLer and this dirty socialist he's sitting next to, I can't believe you're going to give it to him. So, and people booed.
Went over very poorly in the room, yeah.
That's what everyone agrees on.
It's a yes/no question, and he used it to attack his opponent.
Not just his opponent, but all the people in the room he used it to attack.
Just say no. You can say no. It's okay.
Everyone does.
It's a non-partisan. Yeah. You just say, like, sometimes you get people who say yes and then it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you mess it up. You can say, no, because I really want to push these issues and these are the issues that are underrepresented. Mm-hmm. There's a way to say it that's pleasant. And he sounded like nasty. And I was like, I mean, there were jeers in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I talked to multiple Bassais supporters, not like people wearing Bassais t-shirts, but people who were gonna vote for Bassais on the first ballot who said, that changed my mind.
Right.
And I had some other conversations with, I've heard it from Andrea today. I've heard it from Walking Minnesota guy, Tim. I've heard it from Josh Martin. Like, it mattered in the room.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you're going to insult us for how we're spending our Sunday, you're going to pay the price.
Weekend.
Yeah. And by the way, that's the other, I've heard from many, many people independently that the initial scheduling of the Ward 8 convention on May Day, which is a big deal in South Minneapolis, May Day, was a mistake by the planning people, but that the Bassais campaign had zero interest in rescheduling. And it's speculated that they thought that would be better for them because all us weirdo freak lefties would be off dancing naked in the park.
The dirty hippies would be outside enjoying the day. It didn't turn out that way. The
Soren campaign celebrated at May Day afterwards. So
it's the same vibe all over the city. You have the Team Fry on one side, the council candidates who you get the impression when they get elected, they're just going to sit back and relax, let the mayor handle stuff, don't really have an agenda, just ready to be glorified customer service agents. Hey, you got a pothole? Give my office a call. I'll send a note over to the mayor kind of candidates. And then you got progressives who want to do stuff. Maybe they're a little to your left. A lot of these council members are to my left, admittedly. But like, there are things I want to see happen in the city. Like there are changes we need to make. And there's only one side that is willing to, has the courage to try to make any changes. So unfortunately, I'm with them. There's nobody who agrees with me 100%, and so I have to be with the people who are at least pulling in the same direction. And Stevenson is that kind of candidate, the hold Fry accountable candidate, hold police accountable candidate. Love his land use, housing, transportation stances. The kind of candidate who believes in cities, that we should make it easier, safer to get around, whether you're biking, walking, busing, or taking transit. And like the only place where I'm really, and I assume Jacob Fry is going to win and become mayor for a third term. So maybe this is irrelevant, But I would be worried about a rent control policy going bad. That's my worry. And
well, in your podcast with him on the 28th, you grilled him about the strong policy on his website. And he said then, well, that's kind of the starting point for negotiation.
So he's hedging.
He hedged to you. It was like over 6 months ago. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. But one thing I would add, and I kind of bleed about this, I was a big part of the city's rent control efforts for a while. When I was on the working group, I was really advocating for it. I wasn't the most important person, but I was maybe one of the more like loud and rude people. And it's been a dead letter since spring 2023. Like, rent control, I was surprised, hasn't been a big part of this election this year. And you thought they'd really hit fodder on it. I guess they decided other things were better.
Right, yeah.
But it hasn't been an issue. And I can tell you, like, as somebody who has tried to follow and tried to push rent control, like, hasn't come up with the city really.
Yeah, I can't tell when I ask Aisha Chugtai about it, for example, and she says, "Oh no, we're still working on it." Like, is that I have to say I'm still working on it because I need my supporters to believe I'm still working on it kind of thing, or is it really something that is waiting to reemerge at some point?
I can't speak to Council Vice President Chugtai's efforts, but I can tell you I have been consulted about rent control stuff since spring 2023. I think there is stuff going on behind the scenes, but I don't think there's been. I think if they thought they could get it through, they would have done it already. I think if they thought they could count to 9 on any rent control, they would have done it.
Yeah. So Bassais, my impression, just real bad on transportation. Anti-bike vibes he's putting out in nearly every answer on that topic. So it's just unacceptable to me. Just I can't do it. Andrea, do you have thoughts on Josh Bassais on transportation? Or is it Bassais?
I think it's Bassais. And I totally agree with you, John. He is definitely anti-bike all around. And the tell often for folks sort of in his camp is that they say they support bike lanes, but only in certain places. And those places are never anywhere that anyone wants to go. So that's not like a super helpful thing. The thing that I was re-listening to the League of Women Voters Forum earlier today, and he was really, really pushing transit as the solution to sort of transportation in the Twin Cities, and specifically in Ward 8. And to me, that's super interesting because, we have in Ward 8 several high-frequency bus lines, whether they're true BRT or not. We have a pretty good transit mix, actually, already here. The 18 bus is at BRT frequency, even if it's not a BRT line. So, our transit in this ward is actually pretty high quality. And even on the edges of the ward where it borders other wards, there's great lines. But transportation is a system. People have to be able to get between the bus lines and where they're going, and being able to do that safely outside of a car is just like not on his radar at all. And I think that is actually indicative of his thoughts on several of these topics, is like he's looking at a single sort of issue and not thinking about the whole system as it relates to how all these things come together. And I think that's actually pretty consistent across a lot of his things, but really just hammering transit as like a great thing, which I think we all agree. But it can't be the only solution. It's not the only way people get around.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing in that answer. He pivots on a transportation question immediately to transit to say, I'm a big supporter of mass transit that does not, here's a quote, that does not depend on your ability or having a family. So a backhanded swipe at these superhuman athletes who are able to get on their bikes or walk to the grocery store. So like nobody with a family bikes. Children don't need safe places to bike. Like, go ahead, Dan.
I was just biking with my kid on the sidewalk yesterday. And I want to add, this actually really matters in this ward, this election cycle, because of the 35th, 36th Street reconstructions. Mm-hmm. Park in Portland's coming, that's the county. But 35th, 36th is the city. And that's being planned, and it's going to be done in 27, 28, I think. And that matters a lot. I live on one of those streets, and I can tell you, like, they're miserable pedestrian and car and bike. They're miserable, like, all around. And I think, like, basically anything they do to 35th and 36th Street will be an improvement. And the plans look good. And I want to see the city stick with the spirit of its staff's convictions on 35th and 36th Street. And you said something, Andrea, that actually was like, he did the same thing on housing that he did on transit, where he's like, well, it's not a fit here. He did that with the 2040 plan when John asked about it in March. And he said, like, well, you talked about triplexes being underutilized. And he was like, well, they're not a fit on every street. Like, what if you have a street that's all residential? You can't put a triplex there. It's not enough parking. And I was like, ooh, that's like the crypto, like, parking fetishist in Josh Bassais.
It's the NIMBY catchphrase you hear at every planning meeting.
It's not a fit here. Somewhere else. Yeah. Not in my backyard.
Yes.
Or only by commercial, like, you can only have density where there's also, commercial activity.
Put the triplexes downtown, I say.
Yeah, exactly. All of them.
And that's the other thing is when he was like complaining, you asked him about like a pretty softball on Lake in Hennepin. He was like, oh, that's going horribly. And then he blamed like the business. He was like, well, it's because of the reconstruction that there's no business there. And I was like, not economic headwinds that this city suffered over the last half decade.
Retail rents, that's nothing to do with it. Yeah.
Why has the massive Victoria's Secret been vacant for like almost a decade? Like, why is nothing happening with that? It can't be the reconstruction.
I do think it's this thing on housing and transit and economic development. A lot of people just like to ignore that, like, a lot happened over the last half decade where building got harder. Like, we talk about, kind of call back to the rent control conversation. They always tell us, well, it'll stop building. Like, the people will stop building here. Well, the building stopped. Like, it's way down. It's like, I think half where it was at its peak is, from what I can tell, with maybe in the city. I was looking at kind of more regional data, but housing starts and unit starts are way down. And it's like at some point that the low-hanging fruit was going to be picked. And it's like, well, now what do we do with it? And so, not to say that means we should do rent control, but I think like the housing supply, like 2050 is coming. How do we 2040 undeniably invigorated building? What can we do in 2050 that does it? And I think it's at the intersection of like zoning, housing, and transit. And I trust Soren Stevenson on that more than I trust Josh Bassais, who he had this really weird quote. You asked him his top 3 issues, and his third one was economic prosperity. And I wrote it down because it was very strange. He said, people should be able to work in the city they live in. And I was like, that's backwards. That's not the problem people have. The problem people have is that they need to live in the city they work in. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it seems like a rhetorical game, but it shows you his framework where he's just like, for as much as he talked about being pro-union, he always kind of starts with the business side of things.
Yeah. So transportation, housing, the reason these are so important is because this is most of what a city council member in your city government has control over. And there's a lot of attention focused on things the city council isn't. Like, they're not 13 police chiefs running the police in their ward. They fund the police, and the police have been funded. Look at a funding chart. It has done nothing but go way up. They have turned over the money to Mayor Fry and his police. And if you're unhappy with the results there, maybe look at the mayor. But no amount of like, I'm going to bring more energy to being pro-police is going to solve our public safety issues, I don't think. Here's a nice contrast. He was sounding a note of impatience on climate change, and it was just on like on emissions. So here's what he said. If we're working towards zero emissions by 2050, that's 25 years away, my friends. We need to start yesterday. And if we're truly going to make that goal, and I'm thinking, wait, you seem to be against any change to our street infrastructure to allow people to do anything outside of their car safely. I don't even think he would like sacrifice a parking spot to build a bus lane. As much as he says he loves transit, I don't think he would do that. I don't think he has the courage to do that. And he's being impatient on this stuff, on emissions. Blew me away.
Both that and on land use, right? Like his answers on land use also are not going to be helpful towards getting us to zero emissions. So I think it's just an interesting sort of place where I guess if you were to press him on it, my guess would be that he would say like people should switch to electric cars. But like, I think we all know that's actually not a solution to getting to zero emissions.
Heavier, quieter cars.
Heavier cars that have like more particulate matter in the air. And like at the moment, anyway, our electric grid in Minnesota is not zero emissions. And
right.
so
and if Lydia Millard gets her way on data centers, like we will have no electricity left.
Right. So these are not serious solutions that are sort of really responding to the moment that he personally says he feels some urgency to address.
Can I offer a hypothesis on this that I actually mean as praise for Josh Bassais? Okay. I think he's like a true blue national Democrat. When you listen to his most passionate answers at all these things for the last, 8 months, they are all on issues of like, kind of like you're like mainstream Democrat. Like, I care so much about immigration. We have to protect our immigrant. And like, I agree with him. I'm like, man, he's worked up about protecting immigrants and people of color in this city from ICE and the Trump administration. Like, he is worked up. His approach to climate is sort of like a national Democrat approach. Like, it's good. Climate change bad. We got to do something. And the problem is he started his race as a mayoral candidate and he quickly pivoted to Ward 8. I think he's not engaged on local issues. Like your podcast showed that he had no idea anything about the Labor Standards Board. You had to teach him about that on the fly. He didn't know the boundaries of the ward. It's like, he cares a lot and he just has like mainstream national Democratic concerns and no idea what, at the time at least, no idea what like a local candidate does or should be doing.
I'm glad you remember so many details from the Wedge Live podcast. I have no memory of talking to Josh Bassais.
I did my research. I listened to it and took notes.
I just know the general impression I came away with was no good. This guy is.
Can I tell you something you said to Soren Stevenson that was very hurtful for me to hear?
Oh, say it.
At the 46-minute and 24-second mark of the Soren Stevenson podcast released on March 28, you said, and I quote, "If I needed a lawyer, I'd want Jeremiah Ellison."
Oh, wow.
And you know what,
not a
John?
lawyer.
I understand it was more of a spirit and a praise of Jeremiah Ellison's argumentation and demeanor. Mm-hmm. But there was one person you called and you need a lawyer.
That's true. I did not call Jeremiah Ellison. He had absconded to Massachusetts, I am told, so he was not available. That was before you had performed so well in your role as my pro bono lawyer in my fight. In Taylor and I's fight against Carol Becker and Becca Thompson, the twin terrors of Minneapolis.
These words matter. Once you let that toothpaste out of the tube, you can't take it back, John. So I heard you.
Okay. Well, you're very good, too. You had the idea of when we go into the room, you know what we're going to do? Nothing. Our opponents suck so bad, we just shut our mouths and let them understand that a couple of crazy people are behind this, and we just say nothing. That was a good strategy.
Some people say that's the only time in my life I've done that.
So, Andrea, you and I have a history with the group Neighbors for More Neighbors. You have a current role with that group. And I was going back to research for this episode. I'm like, wait a minute. Did he really not respond to the More Neighbors questionnaire? It was like a group of housing orgs put this questionnaire together. And I wouldn't exactly say it's like super partisan. It's just like, tell us how you feel about these issues.
It made
it
very
housing.
easy to answer those questions. Yeah, they were not super. There's no gotchas.
Right.
Yeah, and no, he did not choose to respond to. There's only a handful of city council candidates that didn't choose to fill out the survey, and he's one of the ones that didn't. Soren,
who's
however,
Bassais in league with? Who's Bassais in league with? Who else didn't
The
answer?
realtors have endorsed him. I'm surprised to see the realtor endorsement on so many endorsement pages. Like, is this a good endorsement to have? I don't hate realtors. I know some realtors, but I wouldn't be bragging about having their endorsement. I don't care what the realtors have to say about city candidates. I don't want to know this.
I mean, I think speaking of endorsements, so Josh Bassais has 2 labor endorsements, one from the firefighters and one from the sheet metals union. Soren has quite a few more, including the union that Josh worked for 10 years, which the people that he worked with and the people who do the endorsing decisions are probably different people. But I still, to me, that was particularly telling as I was going into this sort of voting season, was like, he speaks really highly of his time having worked for the union and says he really values labor as a constituency, but has clearly not maintained relationships with the organization that he worked for quite a long time. So to me, I think that is another place where we see a really strong difference between these 2 candidates is in the endorsement slates. Josh's is just very, very short. It's a very short endorsement list. And Soren's is quite a bit broader coalition-wise and includes quite a few, like many more labor groups than Josh has.
I would say Josh Bassais' endorsements come with the Team Fry starter kit. It's all the free endorsements you get just by being Mayor Fry's friend.
Yeah.
Like, you collect them by default and like maybe not expand
It's
it.
like when you go to the dentist, they just throw floss and a toothbrush at you.
It was a gift bag. Those endorsements were in the gift bag when he became a Team Fry member. You were saying something interesting earlier, Dan, about how like he seems so normal as a candidate at that first forum. And like, wow, this could be a race. And I wonder if spending so much time, I have this theory that there's a crank bubble on the Fry side where they go to all the same business community meetings. They're talking to all the same resentful people, but they're less inclined to go out door knocking. Somebody like Elizabeth Schaefer or Lydia Millard, I don't know how much like contact with undecided voters in their wards they're getting, but a ton of time with the angry people in the business community. And I wonder if that like warps your sense of what issues are important to people. And like, if everyone you hear from is just super amped up about very specific things, if it makes you seem like a less approachable candidate or more out of touch candidate, an angrier candidate. Anybody have any thoughts about my theory of the crank bubble?
Nothing to refute it.
I don't want to be an armchair psychologist, but I want to add one thing to it. I think it's the dissonance. Because in the crank bubble, you are talking to people who are like purportedly more powerful. They're certainly richer. They're purportedly more influential. And it can be a little intoxicating, and they gas you up because they want you to run and they want you to carry their water. And I think what happens with a lot of these candidates, and I don't know Josh Bassais personally, I can't say whether he did this or not, but I think there's a psychological effect where these people gas you up, and then you go out there and people are like, no, I don't like you, and I don't like your ideas, and they're bad ideas, and you should feel bad. And they're like, no, people are supposed to like me.
Right.
And I think it's this dissonance you get when you get out of the crank bubble, and it makes it extra hard. And what I heard with Bassais is the longer he stayed in this race, the more frustrated he got. He's like, no, you're supposed to like me. I'm not a freako lefty. I'm reasonable. I'm nice. I'm a dad. And like, you know, and I think that just every single time he got crankier and crankier. And I think like on November 3rd, is he just going to be outside Soren Stevenson's house yelling? like it's just going to like approach, like it's just going to ramp up a lot. And I don't say that, that's more of a joke about the phenomenon than about Josh Bassais personally. Mm-hmm. But I think especially where this ward's probably a tough nut to crack for him. I wouldn't call it an incumbent's advantage, but Soren built a lot of mind share.
Right. And
the question I heard around the ward for 2 years, or at least, you know, like a year and a half after the election and into the spring was like, is Soren going to run again? I think he announced like over the winter, but people were like,
Early
is
side,
he going to
yeah.
run again? I hope he runs. I always heard, I hope he runs again. And I think I heard that from people who voted for Andrea Jenkins, you know? And that was before Jenkins. Jenkins was late to tap out. She didn't like officially tap out or not until pretty late.
That was bizarre because if you want to help the mayor, you get out early and make sure they can recruit a good candidate, because Soren Stevenson basically never stopped running. It was a short 2-year term. Soren Stevenson never stopped, just kept going. And so the progressives had their candidate from, 2023 on. Andrea Jenkins delaying this forever, and I guess that's why Bassais switched over from running for mayor to council. A huge red flag switching from mayor to council, first of all. But I want to commend the PAC, We Love Minneapolis, one of our departed Fry PACs, for putting out their questionnaire earlier this year, full of gotcha questions for their aligned candidates. So just questions like, do you support more renters' rights, yes or no? And like a handful of them said no. I'm like, what? If there was a question, do you support homeowners and protecting them from the evils of whatever they're facing, whether it's property taxes or something else, you would say, of course I support protecting homeowners. Of course. Like
that was the first question at the League of Women Voters Forum, was like, what can we do to support homeowners?
Yeah. And so like to say no to a very broad anything on the agenda to protect renters, no, I think we got it covered. Let's just enforce what we're already doing. Just so out of touch and a borderline evil answer, I think.
Especially, I mean, Ward 8 is not Ward 10 in terms of renter density, but it is up there across the city. And yeah, a lot of renters in this ward.
But I think it also goes to like the soul of Ward 8. Like Josh Bassais in the podcast with you said, I think Ward 8 has been ignored. And then he turned around and said like, well, I'm good friends with Andrea Jenkins. But I feel like Ward 8 hasn't had a voice. And I was like, Josh, I agree with you. Ward 8 has been ignored. Like we don't have any like big attractions. We don't have a body of water. A lot of room in this ward is taken up by 35W. Like we're regularly progressive, but in a way that's like, it's not crazy kooky Ward 9, and it's not like the like passionate technocratic Ward 10. And I think that like I see why Bassais thought he had a lane in this ward because of that. And I think probably Soren is to the left of the ward. But if there's anything, it's that I think the votes Ward 8 has taken, despite having very different demographic profiles across the ward, you're like, oh, they were really strong on strong mayor and defund and rent control. And I think it shows that it's this. I can't quite explain it. I've used rough language to describe my friends in Kingfield before. Not my friends, but like my neighbors in Kingfield. I don't live in Kingfield. I live in Central. And like I've been admonished by Josh Martin and David Brower, like, no, Kingfield's not like that. We're not like the other people in Southwest in the nice leafy neighborhoods. We're like a little better than that. And I kind of didn't believe it. And then I think they're winning me over on that.
Oh, it's true.
I don't know why.
It's true.
Kingfield is the best, actually.
Yeah. It's my second home. That's where I feel most at home politically, aside from the Wedge. Kingfield's great.
I wanted to just add something to Josh Bassais' sort of like mindset as he approaches this election and some like what I have seen. And he is one of the candidates, and I think as a transplant to Minnesota, I noticed this, but he is one of the people that frequently mentions, I've lived here my whole life. I grew up here. I'm here. And the homeowner comments kind of are in line with that as well, of sort of being like, I want to like hold the Minneapolis that I grew up in as the Minneapolis that doesn't probably exist today and probably shouldn't either. And so I think that is just something that I think is a through line through some of his answers about rent control, about sort of home ownership, about transportation, is really this idea of what Minneapolis should be is the Minneapolis that he remembers from when he was a child.
The other We Love Minneapolis questionnaire question that stood out to me: what is the appropriate role of the city council in developing policy and providing services under the executive mayor system, aka the strong mayor system? And his answer was developing a common vision, collaboration, and finding common ground. And I'm thinking, where is the accountability? Like you are running on Team Fry. Like they've given it a name now. He's got an aligned slate of council candidates. And like one of the biggest issues under the new government structure is who's going to hold the mayor accountable. Like when somebody has that much power, who's going to hold them accountable? And it's not going to be Josh Bassais. And it's clear from his answer, it's not going to be Josh Bassais. It's all about collaboration and finding common ground. Well, sometimes you have to stand up to your friend the mayor, and I don't think you will.
He gave the other like crypto moderate answer a couple times of like, well, you just got to listen to people and represent what the Ward 8 things. And what you always say, John, is like, well, who are you listening to? Mm-hmm. And I think you challenged him to name somebody and you couldn't. But it's like when people say like, oh, I'm just going to govern by consensus and I'm going to build that, I'm going to find that in the ward. It's like, okay, well, are you only going to like business association meetings, right? Or are you like, are you hanging out at Phelps Park?
Yeah, it's this apolitical, like that email that went out about the apolitical park board candidates. I think a lot of these people see themselves as the neutral default position, and everyone else has lost their minds for disagreeing with them. And I listen to the stakeholders, and by stakeholder, I mean the people who agree with me. Those are the stakeholders. And why would I ever listen to anyone else aside from the stakeholders?
I mean, for me, it's like, if you get elected, you should see yourself as having a mandate. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want from a candidate is I vote for a guy because he believes in, or I vote for somebody. I'm voting for a guy that I already voted for Soren. Mm-hmm. So I already voted for the guy this time. But I vote for somebody because I'm like, you got marching orders, buddy. Let's go for it. Right. Like, and I don't vote for a guy to be like, I'm going to listen to the people who hate you. I'm actually going to go like only talk to the people who think you're horrible.
Andrea, I hope somebody has an agenda when they're running for office. I hope they have things they want to do. And even if that's keeping everything the same, that's an agenda. And just be honest about it. Tell me the truth. When people try to hide, like, no, I'm just a blank slate here to put my finger in the wind and see how things go. I'm not excited. Who is excited about that?
Yeah, only people who are reading between the lines to understand that they mean keeping things exactly as they are.
What we haven't talked about is George Floyd Square. Can someone explain to me what the new progressive position is on George Floyd Square? Because I think, did Soren Stevenson debut a new answer on that?
Yeah, I don't think he debuted a new answer, but this is one of the things that I, in prepping for this episode, wanted to like make sure I really understood what his position was on, because it's an important part of this. So Soren Stevenson's position on it really is that the city did a pretty thorough engagement process to begin with. There are some immediate things that can be done, such as renovating the Speedway site, such as finalizing the sort of plans for the memorial space, that they should just move on. And then to continue to champion what's called the 38 Thrive initiative, which is really about seeing George Floyd Square as an entire space and not just an intersection, which I think is a lot of how I've heard other people talk about it. Sort of like, what are we going to do with that specific intersection at 30th in Chicago? Are there going to be cars? Are there going to be buses? But really instead looking at it kind of as a holistic part of this area of the neighborhood that has obviously experienced pretty significant trauma, both directly and then I would argue also from the lack of action over the last 5 years in in repairing some of the things that have happened in the space. So his position really is like, we need to move that plan forward, which is pretty community centered. And it was actually, I have a lot of complaints with the way that the city does community engagement, but was actually a very thorough community engagement process.
At the League of Women Voters thing, they asked for lightning answers, And he said I forget the name of it, but he basically at that gave like a one sentence answer that embraced the open to transit plan. And then about a week and a half later, about 2 weeks later, he made a post on Blue Sky where he said, like, I can read it off because I have it open. It's time to act. The D line has been diverted for years now. It is time for it to serve this intersection again, which I would say is a break from the furthest left voices, which is like a break from his potential colleague. Like, I believe Jason Chavez still supports a closed intersection. And I'm sorry if I'm misrepresenting your views, Councilmember Chavez. And so I think that's a little bit of a break with the far left voices in the ward. But it's actually in line with like the Cura survey that was done about a year ago. I will say that like the debating about the survey are so annoying. Like, what do they mean? I'll tell you this, like, I participated in, I live very close to George Floyd Square. I live incredibly close. And I was one of the people surveyed in that Cura survey, I believe it's the Cura survey. With the mayor's administration, I believe, did a survey of like business owners, and they were like, you know, like 80% of business owners. But then when you look at it, they did it by like property parcel, and most of those are all owned by the Cup Foods family, who are kind of horrible.
Right.
So it's like they're like the business owners are very pro totally reopening. The people that live in the area are like 60-something% in favor of a pretty open plan. But there's a lot of very important voices and like very loud, strong voices that are like, no, it has to be totally closed. And then I reposted that post Soren did, and I was like, I think it's like a little weird to I was like, I can't quite figure out how that would work with like a pedestrian mall. And then he kind of came back at me. He was like, my friend, there are these things called bollards. And I didn't want to be rude to Soren Stevenson, but a double length D-line bus is about the length of the like People's Way property. So it's not to say I endorse one side or the other. I think it's a little, it's not impossible, but it's a little impractical to close that one little piece, but say it's still open to transit and it's going to have bollards to let like a double length bus through. I'm sure it could work.
So was he referring to like retractable bollards, or the bus is just
Yes.
going to run over some plastic bollards every time it goes by?
Not our flex posts, not our beloved flex posts. We have so many flex posts in Ward 8. He was specific about retractable bollards. And yeah, I'm not trying to like gotcha Soren. Like,
right.
They could do it probably. I think it's, I don't know how well it would work, but I'm not a traffic engineer either.
There's also a number of freight trucks that have to go through that intersection on a daily basis to serve the businesses that don't have another option. I sit on the city's pedestrian advisory committee, and we've seen this project come through a few times as part of the sort of engagement process. And this is one of the issues that I actually really appreciated Soren just like taking a stand on, because like a lot of things that will come across the desk of any city council person, there's not community consensus about what to do. There's not community consensus in the neighborhood immediately surrounding it. There's not community consensus in the ward. There's not community consensus across the city. So at some point, your job as a leader is to say where you stand and move forward. And while whether his ideas are workable or not, at least he's willing to like state a position. I read Josh Bassais' sort of thing about this, and it's a 2-sentence tweet, which says that this area is like really important and should honor the legacy with investment in safety and opportunity, and Ward 8 deserves action that matches that promise. That's his stance, which tells you,
I believe it,
nothing.
I think at the forum he was like open to totally open. In
Yeah.
the 1-sentence answer, he was like, you have to honor that site by driving SUVs through it.
Right. We need to have cars to honor it. So I just think it's an example of, while my feelings about what we should do in that area are complicated and probably as messy as Soren's are, he is at least willing to say very clearly, here's what I think should happen, and here's like how I got to that, which is to me like better than platitudes, even if his decision making is not necessarily like 100% what I would choose if I were in his seat.
The big majority position is people just being impatient that they feel like nothing is happening. Like, just someone make a decision and stop arguing over community engagement. Let us do something. My impression is a lot of people are frustrated that just nothing is happening.
I don't think more community engagement is going to get to consensus. Like, I think the community has engaged.
Normally, community engagement is used by a tool as like a tool of the moderates, but this time the left has learned how to. We've studied the blade.
Right.
We've learned how to use community engagement. And I have to say, I'm somewhere in the middle on it. Like, I have messy, idiosyncratic views on it. There are people that I like genuinely love who are like must be closed forever, should close off like blocks around it. And there's people who I like really care for and respect who are like, if you don't put cars through that at speed, then you're crazy. Right. And it is like I think it's like it is like a uniquely polarized, it's probably the quintessential Ward 8 issue. And it's super polarized in a way that Ward 8 rarely is.
Are there any other issues that we should address before we go?
Ward 8, I want to say, I actually think that like the Nicollet, we're on the edge of some big developments, and especially with the Nicollet site, where Ward 8 borders the south side of the Nicollet site. And I know that's a place where like I think I break from you, John, a little bit on it, and some other people where I'm like, they should allow cars through it. I think they didn't go far enough with transit and bike, but I do think cars should be allowed.
It's going to ruin 8th Street. Whittier is in for just some awful experiences with that street open to car traffic, I think.
I hope they do more traffic calming there too. But Nicollet, especially South Nicollet, is becoming a really great spot. And I feel lucky to have that within like walking distance of my house, to go to like 38th and Nicollet and have the newly revamped menu at whatever they're going to call Petite Léon next. And there's great stuff there. We have a James Beard winning, like nationally James Beard award winning restaurant in Ward 8 at Boucheron, which is like, I think that there's like exciting stuff happening on Nicollet, a lot of development. If they can ever turn that Burger King site into something, that'd be great. And I do think like I want to give Bassais a little credit for like caring about economic development in a way that like I'm kind of opposed to, but I think we've seen it work in part of our ward, and that's like a really cool area, and it's a really cool resource to have. And I hope they address that in 2050, because I mean, I showed up to City Hall to argue for a better, I know it's in Ward 9, Jaquinos, but I was like, I need a bar within sight of my house. I would love to go do karaoke on a Friday night at Jaquinos. And I think things like with the 2050 plan, like corner commercial, more like neighborhood commercial, like small scale commercial, I think that's something Bassais was a little right on. And I hope that, I don't know where Soren stands on it, but I hope that's something that, I want to say this to Josh Bassais. Don't be sad it's over. Like, go join a committee, go join a commission.
He wanted to be mayor. He thought he should be mayor at the beginning of this election. You think he's going to join a committee? He wants to be the decider on these things. He is not an activist.
This is from a guy who he doesn't know from a hole in the wall. This is my challenge to him, is like, go back to basics. Like, you want to talk about all the stuff you've done and how you hung out at Lake and Hennepin as a punk kid, skater kid? Like, get involved. Do like the hard, nasty work that Andrea was talking about, of being on these commissions with 24 other people of all different persuasions, and like, go do that and be a part of the solution at George Floyd Square. Be a part of the solution on Nicollet, which is like a booming street that could do great things. And just like, start small. Mm-hmm. You had a good chance. You took a shot. If you pack up and go home, that kind of gives away what your whole thing was.
Well, he's going to pack up.
But if you stay,
yeah, I like that we're ending with Dan giving Josh Bassais a pat on the head and saying, "Stay involved, Josh."
Good job, Slugger.
You've tried.
Andrea, do you have any opinions about the Kmart site? The fact that they have opened that up. I think maybe we've talked about this before, but like,
yeah,
do you think it's going to be a disaster?
I do think it's going to be a disaster.
Wow.
and here's how I know it's going to be a disaster. Now we're getting deep into transportation advocacy here, but the whole reason for it is because they've done traffic modeling, and this area can't possibly work unless cars are allowed on Nicollet, which they aren't today. And we're just sort of assuming, we're giving away the whole game by assuming that traffic patterns wouldn't change based on there being different things in the area. And I feel like they could do a lot more with light timing or not having paired one ways going the same direction that they have. Like, there are other sort of solutions if you think about that area as a system and not just like, what will this one road do if we open it? So I do think it will be a disaster, and I think it will be really unfortunate for all of the development that they're hoping to do around that area if they open it up to cars, which they're going to, but it's not going to be good. Such a perfect node for this is where Josh Bassais' mass transit advocacy should come into play. Like, there's already the massive station there. Like, use it for that.
Thank you both for an episode I'm calling Ward 8 Halloween because it will air in Halloween week. I hope this was educational. I got a complaint about our Ward 10 episode that we were too biased. Do you both think we were too biased against Josh Bassais in favor of Soren Stevenson? Were we too biased? Are we going to get complaints about our biases?
Yes, but we obviously gave very reasoned and considered opinions. You'll still get the complaints, though. That's not going to stop.
I thought he tried to be really nice. I said I agreed with him on stuff. I disagree with him on policy, but I don't think he's a bad guy. I really don't. I empathize with a guy who like gets frustrated and pops off his mouth sometimes. Like, there but for the grace of God go I. Mm-hmm. So I want to say, like, I feel for Josh, and I rank Soren and no one else.
Although I have a hard time taking anyone seriously who, like, his campaign manager tried to get Victor Martinez, the Trumper Victor Martinez, elected in Ward 5 to the Minneapolis City Council. I can't trust a guy who has that kind of help.
Not great.
Yeah, you can tell a lot about somebody by their friends.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dan Suitor. Thank you, Andrea Riehl. I'm your host, John Edwards. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.